to the Daily American's Friday Night Kickoff. I'm Bruce Siwy.
And I'm Christina Dunmyer.
Week 1's in the books, and I got to say, you were totally on point with your Player of the Week pick for Week 1 with Austin Myers. He led Conemaugh Township in their victory against Wimber. He had nearly 250 yards rushing, about 45 carries, and definitely spot on with that.
Thank you. You know, we talked about the fact that he was going to be asked to do more on the offensive side of the ball, and he really grabbed the bull by the horns and ran with it. So, you know, hopefully I continue to do good with my picks.
It was a big, important win for that program for sure at Wimber. Really good game that I had the good fortune of being at this week with Conemaugh Township against Berlin. That's a home game for the Indians, and it's one, though, that I think it's going to be a tough matchup for them. I mean, right. Berlin is a very strong team, and one that they could provide some challenges for them.
Absolutely. You know, Berlin won 28-6 over Shade, and while both teams are 1-0, and Conemaugh Township does look much improved, are they improved enough to hang with a team that has been consistently in the District 5 championship game the last few years, you know, consistently in the playoffs? We'll see if they're ready to hang with them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, from what I saw during that game, the linebackers and the secondary read very well. They played a really good game against Wimber, but in the trenches, it's going to be tough to go head-to-head with Berlin's offensive line. A lot of really good players there. Right. Should be an exciting game to watch nonetheless. Also in that conference, there's Myersdale at Black Lake Valley. The Vikings, they were blown out by Portage. To me, though, I don't know if that's an indication of where that program is. Mm-hmm. Portage is a really strong football team, and you know, if you're Myersdale, I don't think you want to underestimate them. Right.
You know, when you have the Caleb Kephardts and the Luke Dividocs running for close to 100 yards or more than 100 yards apiece every game, you know, that really is hard for a smaller team to play with that consistently. You know, Myersdale had a completely dominating win over Ferndale. I don't know if the Red Raiders will have another running clock, but I have a feeling that the starters may be out of the game early again for the Red Raiders.
Also in that conference, you have Portage at North Star, and for me, the key for the Cougars last week in their win was quarterback Steve Mort. He was 8 of 11 passing and scored 4 total touchdowns. Having that balance on offense, you know, that might be something that can help them hang with a team like Portage.
Absolutely, and you know, we mentioned their conditioning. You know, they played in hot, humid weather, and they were able to outlast Conemaugh Valley, and I think that is what the Cougars are going to need the most against Portage, because, you know, we talked about the Kephardts and the Dividocs, where they're just going to keep running the ball down your throat, mix in a little bit of passing when they need to, and if North Star can withstand that onslaught, if they, you know, are conditioned enough that they can keep taking that punishment and give their offense the ball enough, they might be able to hang with Portage.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Conemaugh Valley. They had the loss, but however, they did do some good things offensively. Right. They really did.
Brennan Galasso, that we mentioned in Week 1, had more than 100 yards rushing for the team, and they did manage to pass a little bit as well against North Star. You know, I think they showed some offensive numbers. You know, showed some ability to move the ball, and you know, for Shade, they got 40 yards rushing from Logan Glessner and 35 rushing from Mitch Napora, and they only had 67 passing yards. You're going to need more than that against Conemaugh Valley. You know, people are going to say, oh, you know, throw out the Conemaugh Valleys of the past. They've already shown in one game that, you know, a team that is predicted to be a playoff team, you know, they can hang with North Star. Shade's another one of those playoff teams, and you know, I think Shade's going to have to put up some more numbers if they want to play well and beat Conemaugh Valley.
It could be a close one. Switching gears a little bit, you have a really big matchup in the Laurel Highlands. You have Somerset at Forest Hills. Forest Hills, I think you're going to get a little bit of an edge playing at home. I think that's a really important thing for them in a tough matchup like this. I wanted to point out Sharif Blau for them. He averaged 16 yards per carry last week, an insane number. I'm sure that's going to get whittled down a little bit this week, but he's a guy that's probably going to see the ball a lot and should see the ball a lot.
Right. 131 yards total rushing for him. You know, Somerset will need to keep him in check, but they're going to have to watch Joe Donahue, the quarterback. He was able to move the ball a little bit for the Rangers as well. You know, if anybody saw the Somerset game, I was really impressed with Bryce Mossdoller's touchdown. He had 4 guys that he bowled over. He dragged another one across into the end zone for a score, and that just shows a will to win, a will to score. And you know, I think Somerset will ride on the fact that they beat Forest Hills for the first time last year. For the first time since 1983, they beat them. That was a 22-game streak in 30 years. So, you know, I think this is going to be one of the better matchups this week.
A couple of heavyweights for sure. Then you have Bishop McCourt at Cambria Heights. For me, I think the turnovers were a real problem for McCourt in week 1 against Forest Hills. That's why, you know, they weren't able to hang in that game. But I think if they cut that number down, this is a winnable game for them against Cambria Heights. Yeah,
they had 109 yards rushing on 37 carries, and you're going to need more yards than that. You know, you're going to have to mix it up a little bit more offensively. But, you know, as you said, mistakes limited what they were able to do offensively. So, you know, we'll see what they can do against Cambria Heights.
Absolutely. You have Greater Johnstown at Bishop Carroll. For me, the key guy for Greater Johnstown was quarterback Jeremy Updike. He was 11 of 13 passing. He had 2 touchdowns against Central Cambria. And again, you talk about a balanced offense and how important that can be for a team. I think that he's a guy that's going to lead the way for them moving forward.
Absolutely. And to counter that, Terrell Jones had 169 yards rushing on 16 carries for the Trojans. So that balanced out the passing game. You know, we had talked that the Trojans would be able to move the ball this year, that they should have a high-powered offense, and it looks like they're proving, you know, what we talked about.
Absolutely. And the team that Johnstown beat last week, Central Cambria, they'll be hosting Bedford. To me, the key guy for the Devils there, running back Kerry Kirsch, he averaged nearly 5 yards per carry in that loss. He's a guy, I think if he sees some more touches, maybe he can help them break through the Bedford defense a little bit.
Right. And, you know, another thing for Central Cambria is they need to cut down on the mistakes. They had way too many mistakes in their loss as well. And if you can limit turnovers, that's always a key to getting a W.
I think that'll be a close game as well. Then you have Richland at Penn Cambria. Penn Cambria, we talked about their struggles last season offensively. That seems to have continued. It was a close loss that they had, but they need to get that running game going. Against Bedford, their top rusher was Nick Height, and he had only 3.2 yards per carry. They're going to need to get a little more push to hang in there with Richland.
Right, absolutely. You know, Richland's conference win streak was halted, and they're going to look to start another one.
Yeah, so Richland's going to be a real hungry team in that game there, Penn Cambria. Hopefully, for their sake, they can manage to do a few things, and who knows, it is only week 2, so we'll learn a lot.
Absolutely.
On to the Saturday games, you have Wimber at Ferndale. Ferndale, a real disheartening opener there. Hopefully, for their sake, they can find some positives here and do some things against Wimber.
You know, I saw the coaching staff leave in the second half at the Myersdale game, and they weren't hanging their heads, and hopefully they were able to translate that to their kids and tell them, you know, not to hang your heads, you know, to learn from it and to grow. And, you know, they're at home this week. You always want to play in front of your home fans, play well in front of your home fans. Hopefully that will give them, you know, something to play for. And, you know, the Ramblers are coming off a tough loss. They had a pretty slow start last week in week 1. I don't think you're going to see that from Wimber this week.
The Ramblers should be a very hungry team. Finally, we get to Westmont at Bishop Guilfoyle. Westmont finally broke the losing streak. They were able to get that big first win in week 1 this season. But Guilfoyle is a team who proved that they are who we thought they were.
Yeah, in the power rankings, you know, they're number 1 and Somerset's number 2, and, you know, we talked about that. Was going to be kind of how it was in the LHAC, and it looks like, you know, just after week one, they're doing what we expected them to do. Sam McCloskey and Brandon Chadbourne both had a bunch of touchdowns for the Marauders. McCloskey had 4 touchdowns and Chadbourne had 3. And I just don't see any way for Westmont, even with the momentum of a win, being able to really compete with Bishop Guilfoyle.
And I think Rick Kazmer owes Bishop Guilfoyle an apology as well. He went with Richland, and Guilfoyle really came out strong. Let's see what his picks are this week.
Thanks, Bruce. Points were abundant in several Week 1 matchups, to the tune of 50 points by halftime in some instances. A few surprises emerged from the scoring frenzy. Let's start there. Specifically, with Somerset's 41-0 rout of Bishop Carroll, I picked the Golden Eagles to win, but I didn't think the victory would be this complete. A mix of Barnes, Mostaller, and turnovers added to the mix for Somerset. They next travel to Forest Hills, where the competition will be tougher, but I think the Eagles move to 2-0. In Coal Country, the Ramblers honored 100 years of football heritage, but they couldn't cap the night off with a win. CT's Austin Myers ripped off 240-plus yards on big carries. His trio of touchdowns helped dampen the spirits in Rambler Country. Conemaugh Township will have a tougher matchup this week when they welcome Berlin, who will even the Indians' record at 1-1. In other WestPAC picks, I have Myersdale over Blacklick Valley, Portage over North Star, Shade over Conemaugh Valley, my lock pick this week, and Winbur over Ferndale. The biggest surprise for me was in the Laurel Highlands Athletic Conference. I thought Richland would surprise Bishop Guilfoyle, but they were handled 61-12. I'm sticking with them against Penn Cambria this week. In other LHAC picks, I have Cambria Heights over Bishop McCourt, Johnstown over Bishop Carroll, Bedford over Central Cambria, and Bishop Guilfoyle over Westmont. Despite a few surprises in Week 1, I was able to start things off with an 8-3 record. Back to you, Bruce.
Thanks, Rick. Now we're going to go to your player of the week pick. Who you going with this time?
I'm going to go with Sam McCloskey of Bishop Guilfoyle. The 5'10", 184-pound senior had 4 touchdowns, runs of 3 yards, 8 yards, 1 yard, and 32 yards. Total of 15 carries for 166 yards for the Marauders. And, you know, again, he's playing against Westmont. I just think that he'll have even better numbers this week.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.